Hey guys, Tony with Culinary Seasons, and today I'm here with Joey from Joey's Hot Sauce.
How you doing?
And we're going to talk about his line of hot sauces. I love on your bottles you say no BS, so maybe if you can kind of elaborate on that, tell us about how you came up with this.
Yeah, I mean the sauce really, it's like a love story, you know. My wife was on the shelves in the supermarket looking at all the hot sauces that were out there, and it had fillers and binders and sugar. And she was just expressing her frustration around that. And I was really just inspired. She didn't say, Joey, make me a hot sauce. And she was just telling me her frustration. And I love my wife so much. I'm lucky to have like a really great relationship. And what landed up happening is this. I went to the farmer's market. We were living in LA at the time. And I was at Mar Vista, and they had some hot peppers, and it was like in the valley. And I just picked up some hot peppers. I said, I'm going to make Lisa a hot sauce. And went home and started using my mom's old Italian techniques. And all the restaurants that I've been around all my whole life, was inspired by all this like organic like goodness. And I was inspired to create a hot sauce for Lisa. And that's what the No BS is.
Yeah, so we're going to run through some sauces, talk about them real quick.
Excellent, yeah. So right off the bat, you know, I'm going to let you taste the sauce that I consider that started it all, right? Yeah. And that one's we called it Priscilla the Creeper. And the name is kind of funny because it came out of left field. I don't even know anybody named Priscilla. I don't know anybody named Priscilla, but what happened is that I created the sauce, and Lisa and I were sitting down, my wife, and we were thinking, well, what are we going to call it? And out of nowhere, like what dropped into my head was this Priscilla the Creeper, and in a British accent of all things, it dropped into my head, and I said it out loud, and my wife, you know, she started laughing. She's like, "Oh my God, I love that." And, you know, and that's pretty much how the sauce's name came about. You know, we have a habanero, poblano, mini sweet peppers. That's how we sweeten the sauce. There's no sugar, no additives, no preservatives, no binders, all roasted peppers. So that one right there is the quintessential Joey's Priscilla the Creeper. And we said that the heat kind of creeps up on you. It kind of comes on the back end. You know, you taste it, and the heat kind of creeps up on the back end.
Smell the poblano in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We char the poblanos too. That's the other thing too that brings that flavor. You know, when you have poblano and they're charred, there's that rustic, you know, like flavor profile starts to kind of lift into the sauce.
Definitely a good way to put it. It does have that rustic flavor from the peppers. And the heat's there, but it's not, for me anyway, it's not in your face.
No.
It's a nice little
very very diverse. You know, the funny thing about my hot sauces, all of them, there's no onions or garlic. Yeah. You know, no onion powder, no garlic powder, which is kind of different. So when I created the sauce, it didn't have these things. You know, I'm Italian. There's like garlic almost in everything. I was raised with a lot of it.
Yeah.
But I was like just experimenting for her. And then a lot of people were like, I'm so grateful that your hot sauce has no garlic or onion in it. I can't have that. And that's, I think, the only hot sauce out there on the market that it doesn't have it.
Probably, yeah.
And still has flavor, you know. So it's the different peppers that I use.
Yeah. That
really bring in that flavor.
You said it falls under a keto diet too, correct?
It does, yeah, because like sugar, that's the other thing about hot sauces. A lot of people like to offset the heat with sugar, and conceptually, that's, you know, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But if you don't want to use sugar, you know, for me, I use sweet peppers. I roast them to that caramelization, that sweet spot where it just comes over the edge, where you see the skin kind of break on it.
Yeah.
And that's what really brings in the sweetness to the sauce.
Definitely great. And I've read your labels, and I looked at your website, and I didn't realize there wasn't onion or garlic in it. But the flavor, you obviously couldn't tell me there wasn't it, because it's bold flavor. So it's very good.
Jeff, that means a lot. Thanks. Appreciate that. Yeah. The next one I'd like you to taste here is This one's called Lisa the Truffle Queen, and that came about, my wife's name is Lisa.
Yeah, I was going to ask how you came up with truffle.
Well, to be honest with you, I looked at the leading brand out there that has like the top truffle sauce. I think they innovated the market. I picked up the label and I looked and it said it had agave. I'm like, okay, agave. But I went beyond, and then it had cane sugar and agave. I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Yeah. And then I'm looking, it has some fillers and has some binders, and the color consistency is great. I'm like, wow, this is, I love the concept. And it also said truffle essence, and that was like a big, you dive down the rabbit hole of truffle essence, and is it actual truffles?
Yeah. It's like saying natural flavors. You don't exactly know where it's coming from.
Yeah. With mine, I said, what would it be like if I actually got truffles and by the pound and started grinding them into the sauce? Yeah. And when I was living in Venice, and where we created the sauce in California, I used the Truffle Brothers. I was using their truffles, so they were Italian truffles. But then when we moved here to launch the brand in Oregon, I started sourcing the truffles from Oregon. So right now there's real foraged truffles just grinded into the sauce, and I wasn't about to think of like, all right, what is the financial bracket that it needs to fall into. I was just all about where's the sweet spot. To me, it's always been about flavor first. Yeah. I hate when a sauce or a product out there just checks all the boxes on the package, where you say, oh, it's good, it's healthy, it's got no this, no that, but then when you taste it, it's just like, Yeah. You have to have a good time with what you're putting in your body, not only if it's good for you, but also it has to deliver on flavor.
Definitely. So, and that's one thing that you and I were talking about is I enjoy these because of the flavor that's in them. It's not over the top, hot in your face.
Thanks, chef.
I mean, when as we go, they do get hotter, but it's not just hot. It's flavor. It's different than hot chili flakes. It's different than other hot sauces.
Yeah, so the truffle hot sauce has real foraged truffles blended right in there. And when I was working on the sauce, one of my friends that was helping me do all these experimental kitchen things, and we were doing hand labels back in the day when we were mailing them to friends, and we're like, what are we going to call this? And Lisa, just after she tasted it, she was just all about it. So she basically she said, why don't you call it Lisa the Truffle Queen? And we were like, that's genius. Well, I love that. So it stuck, and that's why we call it Lisa the Truffle Queen. Good, nice earthiness to it. It's not overbearing with the truffle, like some of the truffle products on the market, kind of just over the top with the truffles. And
that's what I was going to say is I'm not a huge truffle fan, because a lot of the times with truffle fries, truffle whatever they're doing, you get this metallic hit.
It's synthetic.
It's not something I enjoyed, but this is a nice earthy flavor with pepper. And it's once again, it's a blend with Priscilla, correct?
Yeah, it's essentially the Priscilla with added truffles in there.
Nice.
And we also do a pinch of truffle salt, and the truffle salt that we use does not have any of that synthetic garbage in it. Nice. We source it from all my salt. I actually source from Saltworks. They're a great company. I highly advise anybody, if they're looking to buy salt, Saltworks is a reliable source.
And you have somebody local who forages for the
the truffles themselves I get from the Willamette Valley. Okay. I have a great contact out there. My guy Scott, he ships them down there. He ships them down to me right when we're going to produce the product. And we go into the kitchen and make a ton of truffle salt, truffle sauce. What else I was going to say? Oh yeah, this is like amazing for like, if you did truffle eggs in the morning,
that would be good.
Truffle burgers. One thing I love doing too is like a delicata squash and just roasting it. And almost when it's like to that point where it starts to caramelize, like just starts to break down, I like dousing the sauce right over it and just letting it bake right into it just right before. Not too early, because if you do it too early, you kind of almost bake it out.
Yeah.
But if you get it right when it's almost there and you pull it out of the oven.
You get to that caramelization stage.
Yeah. And then it just absorbs it, and that delicata squash in this is just magic. Next sauce we got up over here. This one, what we're starting to do at this stage in the hotter sauces is So in all of the sauces, aside from the Hellraiser, which is my hottest sauce, we hull out the core of the habanero. So what, it's a laborious, time-consuming, like process. But we do that because I love the flavor of the habanero, but I don't necessarily love so much of the intensity of the heat that you get. So the fact that I'm doing all that labor work is where you get the fruit notes of the habanero, and you get the flavor of the habanero, and you get the heat of the habanero, but you're getting more of the flavor without the intensity of the heat.
Yeah.
And then to escalate that experience, we're bringing in some smoked ghost pepper.
Yeah.
So the smoked ghost pepper, that's got a nice packed punch to it. But we use a proper amount. Even the hottest sauces I make are more about flavor than they are about just annihilating heat. I'm trying to ride the edge of heat and flavor.
Yeah.
So the 50-50 is it's a good sauce. I like cooking with the 50-50. I love also cooking with the Hellraiser, because you could just put a little bit in some broths and some marinades, and that smokiness just comes up.
Yep.
It's kind of like a delayed heat too. Like you first taste it, and it's like, oh, and then it lifts.
It definitely is. It does have that nice smoky hit, and then as I'm talking right now, that flavor's kicking in, or the heat's kicking in.
I don't come from a background of being a guy that was using tons of hot sauce in my life.
People ask me, you must love the hottest stuff because you're a hot sauce maker, and it's like, it's true. Your tolerance definitely, as being exposed to hot sauce constantly, it raises. But I'm more about making almost like a pepper puree that's hot, and it's a different stylistic approach. I haven't really seen a lot of people doing what I'm doing. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I just think it's because I don't come from the hot sauce background that it made me come in with a fresh footing. I came in with let me just do this thing that is a culmination of everything I was influenced by in my life up until that point. Everything I was raised with my Southern Italian mother, the way that we would make everything from scratch. I would be sitting there rolling out the pastas. We would be making the sauce from scratch. Making the chicken parmesans. Eggplant parmesan. Then we do all these dishes, these traditional dishes, the zucchini flowers, doing all these traditional dishes, all of it from scratch. So I came from that background, and so I feel like that influenced a lot of what I was doing in the sauce. And I also I was working in a restaurant in Manhattan. I had a good 10-year run, and I'd watched a lot of really incredible fine dine raw food vegan chefs coming in and out of that restaurant, and I would just I would even invite them over my house. I would cook for these guys and pick their brains, and just been influenced by them throughout the course of the years that I was working side by side with these chefs. I'm not a chef myself, so to speak. I was actually a beverage director in that restaurant, but I love food. I love cooking at home. I'm constantly cooking, and so I'm influenced. I talk to chefs, and we have I have working with them, and getting inside of their head of how they created a dish, and just really was extremely influenced by them. I feel that also is comes across in the sauce.
I think it's exactly where you're coming from, because you came at this with fresh eyes. Really, you were looking for something that would hit the mark for your wife, that was different, that didn't have sugar. And I like you were talking about the vegan chefs, because being a chef myself, I've been exposed to vegan cooking, gluten-free cooking, all of the specialty diets, but the chefs that really specialize in it, they need to be creative. They need to come up with ways to impart flavor in things, to utilize products to get the flavors out of them. So I definitely see where you're coming from.
Yeah. One of the major chefs that worked at Pure Food Wine went to go work with John George, and he's still currently working with John George. And he was extremely talented. His name was Neil Hardy, and he's just cutting edge. And I feel like that restaurant was really high profile restaurant. And during his during his reign as the head chef at that restaurant, I feel like he really evolved the restaurant. He really pushed the limits of what he was able to create. He was so creative with dishes and just taking like a culinary approach. A lot of times, I find my experience going into healthy restaurants is that they hit on the health, and like I was explaining before, but they lack on the flavor, or they're just they just lack luster. There's something missing. There's no execution being delivered, and when anything hits those marks, where you're actually doing your body a service by not having these foreign substances in a product, there's a correlation to how we feel and what we're eating and what we're putting in. I know hot sauce is just a splash and a dab, but it's if you're trying to choose a healthy lifestyle and you want to put a splash and a dab that's on the healthy tip, there's not a lot of competitors out there doing what I'm doing, especially to the extent of the flavor that I feel like the sauce delivers.
And this many options.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching part 1 of the interview with Joey Repice of Joey's Hot Sauce. In part 2, we sample the hottest sauce Joey currently makes, discuss his hot salt and hot honey, plus see what's coming up this year for Joey. I'll give you a hint, it's gonna get hot and it's gonna get mild. You don't wanna miss out on what's to come.